Okay, it is Tuesday on Main Street, and that means that Bernie Francis is back. Bernie, of course, is a Mi'kmaq linguist. He drops in here weekly, has been for the past, I don't know how many weeks now.
About 6 or 7.
6 or 7 weeks now,
Around
yeah.
that, yeah.
And we're talking about the Mi'kmaq language and the insight it offers into the culture and history and thinking. He helped create, Bernie did, the writing system or the orthography for Mi'kmaq. And he's a bit of a stickler. He likes to hear things pronounced correctly. He told us last week, every letter in every word makes a sound. One symbol for every sound, one sound for every symbol. Is that right?
That's absolutely correct.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And when it comes to the vowels, of course, the presence of the apostrophe, if you've seen it written, that tells you basically the presence of it means the vowel is a long, like literally time-wise, a long vowel.
Yep.
Or the absence is just, it's a short vowel. And if you mess up, this is why Bernie's a stickler. If you mess up, confusion may result.
Previously on Main Street.
Because you can have words such as Kesa'lul, Kesa'lul, and Kesalul. Those words are all spelled exactly the same. But one of them means I love you, the other one means I'm hurting you by twisting your arm, and the other one means I'm throwing you into fire. So those long vowels are very crucial.
Very crucial indeed. That was Bernie Francis last week. And Bernie Francis this week is here with me in studio. Bernie, Begwa Muksan.
Kil Begwa Muksan, Nidap.
Pichalasi.
Well, Alin.
Okay, so we have to go. We had people ask us, were you making that up for comedic effect?
Absolutely not. No. The first one where you say Kesa'lul. Kesalul. That means, I like you. Depends on the, the circumstance.
Yeah. Last week you were telling me you loved me.
Well, yes, but things have changed since. I'm sorry, Jeff.
Okay. Okay, fair enough.
So it is true. Yes, Kesalul is I like you or love you. And then you have Kesalul. That's one long vowel there, that A. Kesalul, right? Which means you're hurting someone by twisting their arm or twisting their leg or pinching their nose or something or other. And Kesalul, you see there's two long vowels there. The E and the A are long in that case. Kesalul means I'm actually throwing you in the fire. So it's very, very important that you get those vowels correct.
It's very interesting to me because we've talked a lot about the hospitality of the Mi'kmaq. Why do you have a word for throwing someone in the fire?
Well, that's just it.
That doesn't seem hospitable.
Mind your P's and Q's when you come to visit me. That's all I'll say to you right now, Jeff. So be polite when you come to see me. Otherwise, it could be dire circumstances in your favor.
I will throw you in the fire. Okay, so are there other words out there for people who are interested in learning, who are perhaps looking and using your orthography, that could be confused? We spoke a bit last week about Pichalasi, the welcome.
Yeah.
Can it be confused with other words?
Absolutely. If you neglect to pronounce that P, and as I said, we are using the phonemic principle, which simply means that for every letter there should be a sound. So if you see the P before that J, it's a very strange combination for
an English speaker,
right? But it's very, very common in Mi'kmaq. So the pronunciation of PJI would be a pchi. It's clearly heard. That P is clearly heard, and the grammar also tells us that the P is there because it comes from the word Bejilasi, P-E-J, Bejilasi. But when you turn that word Bejilasi into the imperative form or the command form, then the E between the P and the J deletes. You get rid of it. Now, that's the reason why you have the P and a J coming together here. So you have what's called a consonant cluster, a double consonant cluster here that has to be pronounced. Because if you do not pronounce that P, and many people make the mistake of not pronouncing it, and I'm talking about speakers too, not just non-speakers who are learning, they say Jilasi. Now that's without the P. That's a little bit too close to Jigalasi, which means to, I won't use the vulgar form, but I will just say, get out of here fast. That's Jigalasi. So Jilasi and Jigalasi are a little bit too close. That's why it's very
really
important.
close.
Too close. And you got to have the P.
Okay. Note to self: never.
Yeah.
So, what does the original Pejalasi?
Pchilasi. Oh, the Bejilasi.
Bejilasi.
When you Bejili, that Bejili part, the morpheme Bejili means the highest. Or its excellence.
Okay.
You know, that is why, for example, when you say, in the days of when we were still living in wigwams, and we still do from time to time, particularly in ceremonies, we may have had that in the Commons at one point, when someone comes to the door and you know this person, you're happy to see them, you say, Pchilasi. Well, that person is given the permission to come in to the wigwam and take the most comfortable spot in your home. It's a very respectful way to welcome someone. It's not just a word like I find. Of course, the word welcome is kind of soft and nice too in English, but not quite. You're not saying much more than happy to see you.
Right.
Whereas in Mi'kmaq, you're saying take the most comfortable part of my home.
Yeah, it's a very
respectful.
I think this is one of the first, we mentioned this, one of the first things we talked about, and I remember thinking just how it is like welcome on steroids.
Absolutely. That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
Welcome on steroids is the word, yeah. The phrase.
Now, do you think that it's do people drop the P? You say even Mi'kmaq speaker. Is it just because it's difficult, or is it just is it evolving?
No, it's because a lot of young people have difficulty with Mi'kmaq language now because there's so much English, right?
Right.
So they do, unfortunately, I hate to say this, but they do get a little sloppy, and to an untrained ear, you will miss that P, just like the word for floor. People will start with the letter S and say sasat, right, for the floor. But it's actually starts with an M, msasat. Msasat. You hear the M there, right?
Yes.
Well, they miss that too. They miss the M. So it's like there's no one there to correct them, you see.
Well, there's one person there.
Well, there is.
Bernie, last week as well, we talked about the way, or I guess you talked about, I listened, about the way Catholic missionaries struggle to translate Father, Son, and Holy Ghost.
Right, exactly.
For the Mi'kmaq.
Right.
And then you used a word that means devil.
Oh, right, yes. The word devil is first of all,
That's another tricky one, right?
That's a tricky one. Mundu. Right, exactly. Even though you'll see a T in the middle there.
Right.
It's in what's called an intervocalic position. That is, it's surrounded by vowels.
Right.
So the P, T, and K, when they're surrounded by vowels, they will sound like B, D, and G.
Okay.
That's what's going on there, you see?
Yeah.
It's not a big thing to remember, but that's the way it works.
But it's pronunciation, because I'm sure that if you mispronounce a D and a T, that is going to, I'm going to say something extremely offensive to you.
In this case, you're pretty safe, because
good.
you're only talking about the devil. So.
Well, that's it. I am calling you the devil. So I guess where do we go from there?
Yeah. Well, you see, there was no devil in North America. So obviously, he had to be a stowaway on one of those ships.
Sure.
And because there was no devil, we obviously didn't have a word for it. So what happened? Well, we had a word Mundu here, or Munadu, if I may go back 250 years or so. And from there, it's not a big jump to go from Munadu to Manitou. And Manitou is the word for God or creator, you see.
Yeah.
But the missionaries, in their quest, now that we were granted a soul, their quest was to save us from the fires of hell. So we had to work very hard, to try to save some of our own words that were held in reverence. But the missionaries were quite strong and very forceful. So the word Mundu, our word for creator, suddenly in a 100-year period, that changed from God to what is now known as the devil. So the devil made them do it, I would guess.
So wait, does that mean then that the missionaries did that?
Yes, the missionaries did that. Some of the words that we held in reverence, such as Mindu, and Buowin is another one, which is, our medicine man in the community, our doctor, psychotherapist even.
Yes, yeah.
We definitely had those words that were very powerful. A Buowin was a very powerful person on the reserve. But
A Buowin.
A Buowin, exactly.
A Buowin.
Yeah.
What is that?
A Buowin is like a medicine man. He's like the magic man,
healer. Yeah.
kind of like a wizard, I guess you could say. But you see, the missionaries had to diminish those powerful words such as Buowin and Mindu in order to get rid of the power that they held in the minds of the Mi'kmaq people. So they did that by making the word God, Mindu, to a devil, to mean devil, and the Buowin to mean someone who will put an evil hex on you. So that's what happened to those words.
So not only are you, if you continue to worship or follow or give thanks to Mundu, Mundu,
Yeah.
not only are you not in favor with the Christian God, you're now actually actively worshiping the devil.
Right, exactly. The problem is, growing up on a reservation as a kid, I grew up with, the legends and stories, all kinds of stories, that were mostly told by women. And that's the one story that I have never heard in my, 60 years of hanging out with the elderly people, was stories of the devil. So there were no stories of the devil because there was no devil. That's why we say he had to be a stowaway in one of the ships.
Came along with the souls.
Right.
Now, just as you said that, I am interested in, for lack of a better term, spirituality. Like what would have been, you said somewhat facetiously last week that the Catholic missionaries came and gave you souls, and you were very grateful. You were very proud of your soul last week.
I wasn't being facetious. Just kidding.
But was there a concept of soul, of something other than the physical?
We do, of course. We have a word, but it's mchijahamich. That's the word we use. But it's
say that one again. Slow it down a bit.
Mchijahamich.
Mchijahamich.
Right. That's perfect. And that actually it could be a soul, could be a shadow.
Okay.
You see, that sort of thing. That's how we saw it.
Is it like a companion, like that kind of?
It could be, although I've never heard anyone put it that way. But you may be right.
I doubt it. If you've never heard anyone but me put it that way, it's it's very generous of you, but it's probably not right.
Well, it's just that we don't spend a whole lot of time thinking about it. We just kind of know what it is.
Yes.
So it's not like a soul that's just sitting there doing nothing either. Because, as I said, we do have our ways of expressing things that are on the move, shall we say?
Yes, yeah.
So, your shadow. I don't, if it's a shadow, then even the shadow is moving because your body is moving. It never really stops.
Was there ever a thought of like? Beyond the physical realm, like how in Christianity talk about there's an afterworld or there's something else, or that you could have a spirit or a ghost of a loved one nearby.
Yeah,
I've heard people speak of listening to the ancestors, asking the ancestors.
Sure.
How do they two relate?
Well, first of all, our people don't dwell too much on the afterlife, until the missionaries came. In fact, our people say, what are you worried about the afterlife for? You don't know what to do with this life.
Yeah.
So we're very interested in looking after this life, the one that we're living in now. That's very, very important. The afterlife, really, we have all kinds of stories. Everybody has their own interpretation. But it's not something that people philosophize on, shall we say.
Okay.
So, yeah. But we do have other, like if I may, there's another problem that the missionaries had. We have two we's in the Mi'kmaq language. And we have the we inclusive form and the we exclusive form. For instance, if there's a bunch of us here in this room, I would look at you, Jeff, and I'd say, in English, we are going to the store. Now, you're not absolutely sure at this point whether
I've been invited.
Whether you've been invited. Yeah. And, well, if you're a good guy, maybe I will invite you. But in this case, I don't know.
Yes,
so I will say then, El Dike or something like that, or Matsalugum. In other words, Ginu, I would say. Ginu is the pronoun, which is the inclusive form, where I include you. So I say, Ginu El Dike, we're going to the store. You'd have no problem in knowing right there on the spot that you are invited.
Right.
If I use the other pronoun, namely ninen, are going to the store.
Ninen?
Ninen. Right. Ninen. En.
Yeah.
Ninen. Then in this case, you know that you're not invited. Right. Because I haven't changed my focus as to who I'm saying this to. I'm saying Ginu are going to the store. You know that you're invited.
Yes.
But I'm still talking to you. But now I'm saying Ninen are going to the store. You know that you're not invited here.
In other words, you're saying Jigalasi.
Jigalasi, exactly. That's right. But to finish that line of thinking, like the missionaries, now you could interpret this two ways. When our people were taught the Lord's Prayer, shall we say, it starts off as Nuchinen, Inen, Waso, right? That means our Father, but not your Father, who art in heaven.
Right.
Yeah. But in other words, only the Father of the Mi'kmaq people, but not your Father or anyone else's Father for that matter. In order to say our Father, supposing you're proselytizing and you want to include everyone, then you would say Guchinu. That means our Father, meaning everybody.
Right.
Right, but not Nuchinen. Nuchinen means our Father, but not yours. Guchinu rather means our Father and everybody else's Father. It's the same Father, you see. That's why when the Mi'kmaq people sometimes deal with government officials, and the government official would say, okay, now that we've had this discussion, we will look after it. The Mi'kmaq would say, what do you mean by we? You know what I mean? It's like
what am I supposed to do?
It's like the Lone Ranger saying, what do you mean by we, white man,
Yeah.
When Tonto was surrounded by natives.
Yes, yeah.
So it's a kind of thing whereby the politicians used to think that the native people were just being rude or saucy by saying, what do you mean by we? They were not being rude.
Yeah.
Because in English doesn't have the two we's.
Yeah, your language is insufficient.
Right. The Mi'kmaq language has the two we's, and you have to be careful which one you use, such as what the missionaries did. But on the other hand, it could be interpreted as the Father, our Father. The Mi'kmaq people might have decided, look, let's continue to worship our Father.
Yes.
And let them worship who it is that they want to worship. I don't know, but it's kind of an interesting thought.
It is a very interesting thought, as all your thoughts are. I really value these conversations.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Welalim.
Oh, Welia.
Welaliek.
Oh, perfect. That's perfect. Yeah. Thank you.
Welaliek.
Thank you from all of us. That's
we
very
all
good.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah.
Your language is coming along
Oh,
beautifully.
yeah.
Jeff.
Thanks a lot. You were always a Jigalasi here. You know that. Bernie Francis is a linguist and a Mi'kmaq elder. He will be back next week at this time.
This is CBC